Thank you so much for your patience. This is the final week of our November mystery box knit along. At this point, we've left off finishing a week 3. To complete this project, we're going to work week 2 again, decreasing 1 stitch in the last row. Then we're going to work weeks 1 through 3 once more. Next, we're going to work week 2 again, decreasing 1 stitch in the last row. So we're going to start here with this lovely lace texture, and what I love about the lace texture is it moves in and out in contrast to some of the other textures. So it's very stretchy. Then next we have our lattice stitch. Okay. So what I love about the lattice stitch here is the fabric is really dense. It's such a sharp contrast to the lace stitches. And then we have our second lace stitch. Now, one thing to notice is how the textures affect the fabric. Right here there's a lot of pearls, so that allows it to be more stretchy. Here there is a lot of moss stitch, so it creates this really dense fabric. And here there's a garter stitch, so that becomes really stretchy. The texture on the sides is gonna vary, even though there's only 1 stitch difference. There's only 1 stitch difference between the amount of stitches between one of these sections. So take a look at it in the shape of a cowl. It will still look, the textures will still look wonderful. But we're also going to give you an option to block it. So we're working on our last row here, and we want to do a decrease stitch. So decrease 1 stitch, and then what we're going to do is we're going to cast off. I like to cast off with my crochet hook, so I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to knit like you normally would with your needle, but instead with a crochet hook. And so you're just going to slip the knit stitch underneath the previous knit stitch. So you're going to slip the second knit stitch underneath the first knit stitch. Just like that. Let's do that again. We're going to knit the stitch and then just slip it under the previous knitted stitch. Continue all the way to the end until you have cast off all of your stitches. So just snip your yarn and pull through. So here we are going to either get ready to steam or get ready to block. We're either going to get ready to seam or get ready to block. So what you want to do is you want to face right sides together and just bring the ends together without any twists. So don't twist your work. And you're going to either seam this edge, or let's show you how to block it. So this is blocking. We have a blocking board here. We have a really great blog post on how to block acrylic yarn, so go ahead and refer to that. For this blocking, what we did is we soaked our finished item in some diluted fabric softener with just regular tap water. We let it soak for about 15 minutes. We wrung it out, then we rolled it up in a towel to get out any excess water. And so now it's pretty dry, but it's all, as you can see, it's all wrung out and wrung together. What we're going to do is we're just going to fasten the edges in any place that we feel needs to be maintained, where the shape needs to be maintained. We don't want anything to be overstretched or understretched. We're just going to lay the fabric so it's nice and flat. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our fabric maintains the form we want to see at the end. So we're going to make sure that the lines are straight. I want to make sure all the lines within the fabric are straight and look the way that I want them. And I'm simply just going to pin this dampened fabric to the blocking board. One thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that it dries quickly and check on it frequently as you're allowing it to be blocked, because you don't want it to get musty or smelly. After all that hard work, you don't want it to get any kind of yucky. It's one of the reasons why I like using a diluted fabric softener in with my soaking. It makes it smell fresh. I mean, it smells good in the first place. But just, you know, ensures that it smells pretty fresh, and it softens it a little bit. So there is, any kind of time you work with acrylic, typically, let me say that again. When you work with acrylic, typically there's a coating on the yarn. It helps keep the yarn together from fraying as you're working it. And then the first time you wash it, that coating will come off, or it'll dissolve, and you'll find that your fabric is a lot softer. So that's, you know, another reason to block it. As you can see here, some of my fabric isn't straight. You see this line is not as straight as I would like it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just adjust my pins a little bit. Make some adjustments, maybe do some pins in the middle to make sure that everything is lining up the way that I want it to. If you're blocking a sweater, it's really important that you check gauge as you're blocking. You don't want to block your piece larger or smaller than what your gauge is. This is a cowl, and our gauge isn't required. It isn't super important to our cowl, but you know, as you get used to blocking your items, it's just one thing to keep in mind. So if you noticed here, I stuck a pin in the center of the work just to make sure that my lines are all straight. So we got one more pin left. We're finished blocking. We're just going to take a look one more time, make any adjustments we feel is necessary, make sure things are not stretched out beyond what we are comfortable with, and then we're going to let it sit. We're going to let it sit for a day or two until it dries. Here is where it's dried. You can feel how it's much softer than before, and we're just going to take our pins out. Ooh, this has really nice drape. Okay, so our cowl is blocked, and now we are ready to seam. Now that our cowl is blocked, let's take a look at some of the textures in our cowl and see what kind of differences we see. You can see that there's still some of the same variants, but our edges are straighter. The lace texture, it shows the optical illusion is still there, so it still may feel a little wonky, but our edges are straight. They look very professional, and we're ready to move forward. So we're again going to lay our finished piece face together. We're going to work on the wrong side of the fabric, and we're going to seam the ends. I'm just going to thread my needle here. One thing is I used too sharp of a needle. I really should have used a thicker needle, so you'll see me kind of struggle with some of the stitches. That's one of the reasons I couldn't find my larger darning needle, so I used a smaller one. So now we're ready to seam the ends. My long tail here for weaving is at the very edge. I'm going to find the last stitch on the opposite end. I'm going to go through the first stitch and then the stitch next to it. Now I'm going to go back to the original stitch that my end came out of and go through that one. I'm going to move over and sew through the next stitch. And then go back through the previous stitch on the opposite side. Oh, see, my needle's a little too sharp there. Now going through the next stitch. And the previous stitch of the opposite side. And then through the next stitch. Continue seaming until you've finished this edge. Okay, so now that we've finished seaming, we weave in the ends and snip. I like to pull it taut and make sure my ends are hidden. And this is what it should look like when you're finished. Now this is a little bit oversized and yet undersized at the same time. So you should be able to wear it long, or you should be able to fold it and wear it tight around your neck. When you block it, it'll be a little bit longer. If you want to wear it doubled, you may just want to block it anyway. We hope you've enjoyed this knit along. Make sure to stay tuned. We have lots of more tutorials, more things coming, more things in the work for the new year. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media profiles, and happy crafting!